Get your Amazon Prime free trial started today. We at Cigars and Sea Stories love Amazon Prime. We use it all the time. I myself, Mike Penny, am a member of Amazon Prime. I use it for live streaming on music, video, things of that nature. Sign up for a free Amazon trial, 30-day trial right now. You can find it on the resources page over at cigarsandseastories.com/resources. Take a look at that ASAP. Folks, if you haven't already done so, check out Audible. You can get your latest podcast. You can get the best in audiobooks. And if you're like me, you're always on the road. You're traveling around, in and out of airports, stuff like that. Always got the earbuds in. Check out Audible. You can get a free trial today when you go to audibletrial.com/cigarsandseas. That's audibletrial.com/cigarsandseas. Check it out. Due to the graphic nature of its content, listener discretion is advised.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for
On this episode of Cigars and Sea Stories, Mike, Jocelyn, Tim from the Cigars and Sea Stories team sits down with two Army officers, Dean Bundschu, we'll get into his background, and Mr. John Brady, we'll get into his background. You're going to hit the wave tops with these guys. Dean here is the executive director of the new bunker. It's going to be opening here in Raleigh, and we'll get into the background on that. John Brady is the owner of, I hope that I pronounce this right. Are you ready for this? Nusiak Wines. And that's NEUSIOK Wines. Check that out. So you can check out bunkerlabs.org, right? Bunkerlabs.org or Nusiak Wines, NEUSIOK.com. And we will be sure to add that on there. Mr. Dean Bundschu, Mr. John Brady, thanks so much for joining us here in Cigars and Sea Stories studios.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Thumbs up all around. Yay, go team.
As we say, the crowd goes wild.
Woohoo! So, Dean Bundschu, tell us about the bunker, man. Tell us about this story and about, where you're coming from, Army officer-wise first, and kind of what led into this.
You mean start more with my background?
Yeah, start more with your background. Frame it up for our audience. Because, he's a cool guy, people. We're doing cool.
For an Army guy.
Right, for an Army
Right. So, infantry officer type, spent about 5 years on active duty, got out, long story short, got called back in, went over to Iraq back in 03, 04, OIF-1. After I got back from that, I was fortunate enough to go work for an organization called Orion International. I'm sure a lot of military folks are very familiar with them. Worked in the military transition space for about 2.5 years, which was awesome for me simply because, I got to work with the whole company's veterans, which is cool. But, over, I guess, the lifetime of that company so far, they've helped over 33,000 vets find jobs. Wow. So, and that's exactly what I did, was work that angle for about 2.5 years. But as a side note, the founders, Bill Laughlin and Randy Nelson, are both super entrepreneurial and do a lot in support of veteran entrepreneurs. Yeah. So
they're Marines, right?
Randy is a P3 pilot, or a Navy nuke, remember? Randy Nelson's Navy nuke, and Bill Laughlin was a P3 pilot, Navy.
Okay.
So,
right on.
So, but that's those are the two who became my mentors when it comes to being an entrepreneur. So when I left Orion, I became an entrepreneur. Started up a tech company called PrepChamps. It's also where I met my two partners to this day, Jay Kerr, former Air Force Academy grad, Hal Fisher, former Air Force. Started working with them, and, I've been tied to the entrepreneurial scene ever since, but the one piece that was missing for me was getting back to a point where I could help vets. So, and that was the same thing with Hal and Jay. It's like coming from Orion, those guys coming from the space, it was like, what could we do? And being entrepreneurs made us start to see, hey, what can we do to help other vets become entrepreneurs? When historically, something we talked about a lot, going back to World War II, 49% of the veterans transitioning out became entrepreneurs. Again, it's a different time, different place, right? However, start all the way to 1996, over 12.5% of the guys getting out became
Right.
entrepreneurs, and
Yeah.
now it's less than 6, right?
Yeah.
So clearly there's a problem. So, and the reality is there's a lot of great programs out there, but just think, a lot of it's awareness, and I think a lot of the initiatives that go on right now are focused on what? Education. When you get out, you got to get more education. You got, GI Bill, use that, and employment. Companies push higher vets, which again, both are key. But to me, it's like there should be 3 pillars, right? It should be employment, education, or entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Because
Yep, right.
Absolutely.
not everyone wants to go get more education. Not everyone wants to go get a job.
Yep.
So what are those people supposed to do?
Right.
A lot of them, historically, vets were entrepreneurs, very entrepreneurial, and do very well.
Nowadays, you're just on your own.
All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what inspired us to launch Startup Veterans, and
Yes.
and being in that space, we connected with the folks from both Patriot Boot Camp and the folks from Bunker Labs, which is run by Todd Connor, based out of 1871, which is a tech innovation center up in Chicago. And Todd started it all back in 2014 as one incubator for startup veterans in Chicago, and realized how much value they were providing there, and reached out and started to get more and more support from the community, corporate sponsors, foundations, and that's allowed the Bunker to expand. And with us doing what we did, we reached out to Todd and put together a partnership, and now we'll be launching Bunker RDU here formally December 8th.
Awesome.
Yes.
The first program will kick off. The first actual physical cohort will start after the first of the year.
That's very cool.
So-
Sweet.
Very cool.
That's fantastic. Dude, that's wonderful. And then Mr. John Brady, where are you coming from?
The details of my life are rather insignificant. I've had a long career in the military. I enlisted in 1981 as an air defense artilleryman on a M42 Duster, so that gives you a little bit of idea. It's like, lobbing rocks at jet airplanes.
Right.
But been doing it a while. Field artillery officer now. Been a field artillery officer since 2002. Did a little trip to Iraq, and just doing it. About ready to hang up my spurs as far as that stuff goes. And last couple of years, we jumped into this adventure. Actually, stumbled into winemaking, and continue to stumble the more wine that you make.
Right.
But
You gotta stop getting high on your own
yeah,
supply,
well,
man.
hey, if it's not good, you got to have QA, QC.
Right.
So we've been rolling along. Stumbled into it. Wish I'd had something like the Bunker. Like some of the organizations that you've been involved in, and but I stumbled through it. Just kind of didn't have anybody to talk to. There's not a lot of wine companies out there that want to help a crazy ass Army guy to get started. So I just kind of pounded my head against the wall until I busted through some stuff, and so we're still we're doing it. We're learning and going, and they're starting to grow. So we got great products. I'm hoping at some point everybody else knows it.
Right. Hell yes.
Yeah.
What was sort of your big breakthrough moment? You say you kind of beat your head against the wall till
Just
started
like
working.
the permitting process is terrible. It's very difficult to figure it out, and trying to get through to the TTB, which used to be the Alcohol, Tobacco and Trade Commission, is there's like 3 people in there, and there's 1,000 other breweries and other entities that are always trying to get their attention as well. And here's this unknown crazy Army captain trying to talk to these guys on the side, and that's how I got in. Was I finally had to leverage, hey, I'm just a dumb Army guy, I need some help. And then all of a sudden it's like the doors opened. So at least thank God for that. But it still was difficult. It took me a couple of years to get all the permits, and then ABC commission, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just doing it by myself.
Jesus.
So you made him feel important by asking for help.
Yeah, sure, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that sort of helps sometimes instead of trying to dictate. Because in the Army, as an officer, you kind of get a little bit used to being able to say something and it just happens.
What?
In some
Really?
degree.
I'll be damned.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't work like that.
Thought that was a Marine Corps thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the civilian life, they don't give a damn who you are.
No.
You know, they don't care what. You can tell them whatever. You could be no, we won't go there. I was starting to get political. Anyway,
Right.
yeah. So it just you have to learn to finesse, and I'm not a guy that has been brought up with a lot of finesse. It's like you go do this, take that hill, that kind of stuff. So
Right.
So it worked out.
Nice.
So far, so good. Now we're kind of through those. I've learned some of those hurdles and pitfalls, and
Right.
And I'm willing to help somebody else. I mean, I'm just saying.
Right. As he is right now.
Hear
And
that, audience?
in running some management aspects around here.
Well,
Don't-
at least I'm glad your standards aren't that high.
Well, we're here. So.
We had to get deep. We had to get deep on the bench, but we got them, folks. I know. So, yeah, man, this is
I hope you
fantastic.
say that in a few months.
There you go. Yes, absolutely.
Well, the good news is we're kind of seeing a little bit of a 360. We've got your back concept behind the bunker, and then we've got the guy that's kind of struggled his way through, showing that it can be done, even if you have to struggle through. However, we're trying to make it so that there's more hope, so that there's outlets and facilities to go to, so that some of these rough edges are grinded off before the next group of veterans goes through. Anyways,
what?
I think that's key, right?
And hitting on that point specifically, what type of businesses is the bunker really interested in? Does it cover the full spectrum or tech or?
No, good question. So, I mean, the bunker is designed to facilitate all different types of businesses, right? So it doesn't, a lot of these programs that are out there, the accelerators, incubators, in general, I think mostly are geared towards the tech space, right? So being that, of course, there's a portion of vets that get out, I'm sure they have great tech ideas. However, I think a vast majority, probably have service-related businesses, I think by and large. So, and the bunker understands that. So that's another key difference between, I think, the bunker incubator and, a vast majority of the civilian-type incubators that are out there. So for us, it really doesn't matter. And, I mean, I'll give you a good example. Like some of the companies that we have up at Bunker National, one of the biggest, most successful ones is a construction company, right? Mm-hmm. So, and with here locally, like one of the companies that we have coming into the bunker is a company called Two Finger Toothbrush. It's run by Green Bray. It's an ergonomically designed toothbrush that's actually designed to have less impact on your gums, right? So, very cool. Medical device company. Another one of the companies that's going to be participating is a barbershop company, right? So, and True. I mean, people are like, well, it's just a barbershop. Why would that be a fit? Now, granted, if it was just a single location barbershop, probably wouldn't be a good fit for the incubator type concept. However, I mean, they're putting together a franchise model. 3 nice. Locations, 2 more coming, building all the systems, that'll scale. So,
yeah.
But
Hell
point
yes,
being,
that's very exciting.
It's kind of running the gamut of different types of businesses,
right? And I mean, business is business, and that's what it comes down to. It's all still about fundamentals, and and that's what the bunker is about. And what the bunker is designed to do, and the reason why it's expanded is, if you look at the locations where we're in, I mean, we're now set up where we have pretty good coverage, across the country, region by region. And now it's kind of the next step, right? So with the headquarters being for like Bunker RDU and Bunker RDU, now we can begin to launch our subchapters, and each bunker is going to be doing that here over the next year, right?
Nice. So
that way, we can expand, our footprint and support companies out and communicate, entrepreneurs, veteran entrepreneurs out in other communities that, it's not practical for them to be here, right?
Yeah.
But with technology the way it is, it's very easy for us to begin to build that model out. So if you think about it, that's kind of the next phase of growth.
Nice.
For the bunker. And I mean, as far as the bunker program goes, what we're all about The other thing is, I think makes us a lot different than any other program is there's always been, I think, programs out there that have supported veterans. There's programs that support, disabled veterans, female veterans, veterans in general, but I think most of them have been community-based, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
But this is kind of the first time where, not only is a bunker set up to support a community like RDU, but with subchapters, we're set up to support the state. Mm-hmm. And with the other bunker locations set up to support their communities and their states, and now we can tie that entire community together, and that's never been done before, right?
That's huge.
So if we can't maybe provide some support here, but maybe, for example, Andrew Williams and the Makers Lab and the Innovation Center can in Wilmington, we could send them there. And maybe if they can't support it there, maybe if it is a tech company, but we have our incubator in San Francisco, well, maybe they're a better fit out there, so we could send them out there. So it's just like you guys talked about, the cross-pollination. That's what it is. It's about building, communities, really strong veteran communities in each
pocket.
Sort of a big referral network as well.
Right. And then having, the state referral network, the regional referral network and national referral network when it comes to investors, partners, mentors, the full gamut.
Nice.
It's like fobs of resources that are around the U.S. That's awesome.
And the big thing is it's not only so for example, within the state, we have the headquarters here, and then the subchapters will be able to run their own workshops to support their entrepreneurs in their communities, but then we'll do, maybe biannual bigger events like we did with VetStar, except on an even bigger scale within the state, and then the bunker does some of their bigger nationals. So, if you think about it, we could bring all the veterans, entrepreneurs within the state and connect them, a couple times a year. And then, on an even bigger scale than that, we could run, for example, the muster, which is a huge event. Over 500 and some veterans participated in that last year. But now that we're building all this infrastructure and this network, that event can become giant. And so now there's talking about, okay, let's run maybe 2 or 3 of these where we can gather up veteran entrepreneurs from across the country and bring them all together.
Wow.
At different times throughout the year. And I think
huge.
that's where it starts to get really huge, right?
So I got a question, and probably our listeners are wondering too, to kind of clarify exactly what it is that Bunker Labs does. I mean, obviously it's incubator, whatever. If I'm a veteran, I just got out, I got this, the next big idea, whatever that is. Right. I come to Bunker Labs. What's the process? What are you going to do for me? What are the requirements? Are the prerequisites? How does it all work? Cool.
So we have an application process, and as I mentioned, as far as requirements go, there's a couple things. I think the biggest being that the whatever you do, the industry doesn't matter, but the concept has to scale, right? So if it's just a lifestyle consulting company, great business. People do great in that, but for them to get the full benefits and also be able to contribute, as far as supporting their peers, needs to be some type of business that scales, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of number one. But once you kind of get through the app process and the interview process and get accepted into the bunker, what we do is, we're partnered with RTP Foundation, and we're headquartered out of the Frontier, which is a huge open entrepreneurial workspace, great collaborative environment. And we are plugged into all different kinds of organizations within the community. So first and foremost, it's a 6-month entrepreneur in residence. So at least one founder that's participating has to spend, I wouldn't say they have to be there full time because there's all kinds of other things going on, right? But the more time they can spend, it's highly encouraged that they're there for at least a couple days a week on site with the other companies that are participating in the program. And as part of that program, we have a 4-month curriculum, entrepreneurial curriculum. And that curriculum basically is 3 hours a week, every Tuesday. And it's based on different elements of entrepreneurship. And we bring in all different kinds of folks that tie into each block of instruction. For example, if it's finance or fundraising, or corporate structure or IP, we have different volunteer pro bono facilitators and experts that will actually come in and help teach and facilitate those classes. And then, of course, after those 3 hours of instruction, usually another 5 or 6 hours of work they'll have to do on their own and present that the following week. And then every Thursday, we do our innovation workshops. which, like I said, for us, it's one thing just to provide an entrepreneur with education. I think to me, it's more about actually getting those entrepreneurs out and letting them connect into the community and everything else that's going on. And, in a place like, Raleigh, Durham, for example, there is all kinds of things going on.
Oh, yeah.
So for us, we use those Thursdays as an opportunity to actually take our innovation workshops and partner with organizations like HQ Raleigh, which is a tremendous accelerator, entrepreneurial, that's actually spanning across the state. We partner with Groundworks Labs, which already runs a great incubator program, so we're doing a lot of collaboration with them. We partner with UNC Systems through UNC Innovation Center and NC State and Hugh Shelton, General Shelton, former Chief of Staff, their program. So, for us, the benefit is tying these guys into all that existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
So,
yes, absolutely. This is huge. It's massive.
Right.
So on Thursdays, what's the event though? What do you?
The innovation workshop.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
Innovation
and that's
workshop.
open to the community. And actually, that's where we really encourage, like entrepreneurs that aren't officially part of the program, could absolutely are encouraged to come to that. So even if you are maybe running a lifestyle, but you just want to plug in and get some exposure and get a lot of benefit, because there are some presentations and stuff that go on that. We usually use that day for the entrepreneurs to actually pitch. Mm-hmm. And then we also use it as a day for where we break off into small groups. Mm-hmm. And the entrepreneur usually throws up some type of challenge they're having and uses some of the other folks that are in the room, within those small groups to help them brainstorm or find solutions. So, for example, when I was up in Chicago, one of the companies I was working with didn't know which potential marketing channel they wanted to open up, right? Whether it was partnerships, whether it was direct marketing, whether it was online, they had no idea. But one of the things I did was, given their business model, I had a guy who sold his company down here for $170 million that was in his space.
Ooh, hello.
So I facilitated that introduction.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, dude, take a look at this. Number one, he's a potential investor and they're looking for money. But number two, he's been down there. He knows what they're doing. He could break everything down and, hopefully put them in touch with some other partners and stuff like that. So that's what the Bunker Network is all about, right?
Hell yes.
Yeah.
So
that was going to be my question. Like, what, that sounds like it's more for, what's the right word? Plebes or new guys with bright shiny ideas. But what about the guy that's been there doing it, something like me, for a few years, and you just kind of, you need somebody to lock arms with or talk to.
Right. No, there are some, that construction company that came in, I think they were actually doing a couple 100,000, if not $1 million, some revenue when they joined. So, but one of the things that they learned is they thought they had it figured out, right? But they went back through and actually redid some of the business planning type stuff, and it actually helped them redefine their business and look at different other opportunities. So, it's pretty open. Like I said, the only thing is it's just typically not like some type of company that doesn't scale, which is, that's more defined as like the one person type organization. You know what I mean?
So you could take a company that, for example, has been in business for a couple of years and doing okay or whatever, right. But maybe the owner didn't intend to scale or didn't really have the vision at the time to think that it could scale,
right?
But turns out it could, and now maybe you guys could partner to show them how to do that.
I'm telling you, like a lot of the companies that I was exposed to, even up in Chicago, several companies were in business 2-3 years.
Yeah.
That became, and that's pretty typical.
Yeah.
Because a lot of companies too, in order to get into the bunker, you typically the company has to be up, has to be running. You usually have been through proof of concept. If you have some type of product, you've had to have had it through prototype already, where it's actually been tested and proven, because that's where it comes in. You have to have something that's going to generate revenue, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's legit. Because the goal for us is to help you accelerate your growth, and then hopefully potentially even pass you on to some other program that can take you another step further, or investors that will help your company, provide the capital to help your company grow, so on and so forth.
So here's a question for you. So a lot of veterans are looking for ways to add value, obviously, and you're doing it through Bunker Labs and the things that you've got going on. A lot of guys are getting into the nonprofit space. Is that something that Bunker Labs is into at all? If somebody has a nonprofit venture?
Yeah, not so much.
No.
Yep. We have organizations that we refer people out to, but it's just hard, at least at this point. It's not to say I'm sure that that's not something that can open up down the road, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not meant to make a
it's
profit,
like any
so
other
I
startup,
understand
right?
the reluctance for an investor to want to do that. Yeah.
Well, and not only that, it's like, where the bunker is, if you think about it, the organization's just started in June 2014, and most of the bunker lab locations have just stood up over the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months, right?
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of work that we're doing as
an organization,
to build out our SOPs and share best practices and fine tune the curriculum and cut out some programs that maybe aren't worth pursuing to focus on programs that are. So it's a learning process. So just like any other startups, like you want to really focus in on what you're good at first.
Yeah,
and then
sure.
You can kind of spread out.
Well,
but right now it's deep and narrow. So,
Right. Right.
Well, that's the glorious part about the entire entrepreneurial process, right?
Yeah.
It's that constant refining. I mean, you never can get too comfortable with what you're doing. Otherwise, you end up just falling off the face of it. But at the same time, getting that fresh perspective from getting different eyes on your project, maybe, a couple years into it, or coming out fresh and just saying, hey, I just need help, but I got this great idea, and let's build a team around this,
Yeah.
Well, I tell you the other thing that's really beneficial is the whole principle behind the incubator. Like I said, the education piece that we offer is a small piece, right? Really what it is when you bring a bunch of really motivated veteran entrepreneurs together, put them in the same room, it's just peer-to-peer.
Synergy.
Right.
Oh,
So
yep.
and that's the purpose of the cohort. It's like everything else. You want that cross-pollination. That's something that, by the way, when you talk about the application process, that's something that I look hard for. It's like, obviously we're going to do everything we can to help you, but I'm also looking for people that are going to be willing to contribute, to the program and help their fellow veterans.
Right.
You
In a
play
huge
with
way.
others.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, because, again, for us, we're spending like 3 hours with them officially on Tuesday for the formal, the innovation workshops. That's another 3 hours on Thursday. In between that,
Yeah.
they're building their businesses, but they're sitting right there with other entrepreneurs that most of them are facing the same types of challenges, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Well, that's something that we usually share with other guys also is we're like, this is a left seat, right seat.
right,
We're showing you around the AO.
right.
Here's some of the do's and don'ts. You might want to avoid that intersection. You
Right,
can
right.
pretty much bring everything back to a combat analogy,
Yeah.
and you're going to be fine. Like we're adjacent units. We're attacking the need.
Right.
That's another beautiful thing that I love doing also is just reaching out to fellow veterans. And literally I'll tell them, hey, Mike Penny, Cigars and Sea Stories, reaching out as an adjacent unit. Just want to say hi.
Right.
How can we support your mission? How can we do this other stuff? They immediately get it.
And he immediately gives guys with PTSD flashbacks. And
No.
they're
Right.
back in the AO going,
And they're like, fuck, this guy's a sergeant. Right.
Well, I mean, and that's something. I mean, that's the whole reason why Startup Veterans, we partner with the Bunker and Patriot Boot Camp, is because to us there was like absolutely no reason not to collaborate with every other organization that's out there supporting veteran entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
right?
yeah, absolutely.
So, and it's just, and what the Bunker ultimately wants to do is tie that whole space together. So I
That's
think it's
cool.
well on its way to.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like
Yeah.
your physical expansion. You're talking about Raleigh is obviously the first location here in North Carolina, and you're talking about over the coming year or years expanding into other locations out in the community. Sounds like that's really important because of the resident nature of the program.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, and here's the kicker too. I mean, most people know that entrepreneurship is really community based, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is. So I mean, it's great to be able to tie into the national network and have that network to pull from and be able to direct people. But really, I mean, that it still starts in the community. So the more veterans that we can bring together to build veteran entrepreneur communities, I think the better off we'll be. So,
Well, there's
and-
another avenue that I think you're touching on there is that avenue for guys that are actually a lot like me in that, I had some ideas before we started this endeavor about what I wanted to end up doing, but, I wasn't ready to pull the trigger. I wasn't even in the right mindset to be an entrepreneur at the
Right.
time. I just had this notion that I'm not free right now. I don't make my own choices. They're all made for me. in my day, and I hate everything about it. But for the guy that isn't ready
totally
yet,
relate.
there's got to be
Tell me
a
what you
pipeline
think.
to connect.
How you feel?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's got to be a pipeline to connect those guys that aren't quite ready with guys that are already in the space. Because for myself, it's like Mike's like, well, hey, look, that is an entirely viable option. What you're talking about, let's get you into this startup. You agree with the mission 100%, so you won't have any issues jumping in. So it's like perfect. I mean, start it here, see what a startup process is like. Also, start building a network of people I know, and then if in the future we want to start that under a holdings company, then that can happen. If not, then we can start it separate or whatever. But at the very least, I have seen the entire process happen in front of my eyes and been part of it, collaborating and trying to be as useful as possible,
Yep.
and then going forward from there. So there's that avenue that I still see, and I wonder if you guys have thought about that.
So no, it's actually really good. And yes, here's two things that are going on. So on the 6th, what was today, 4th? 2 days from now, Bunker in a Box,
Thursday.
which is our online curriculum,
Okay.
is going live. So, and the online curriculum, the Bunker in the Box program, addresses exactly what you're talking about, because it's set up not for an entrepreneur who's actually at the point of starting their business. It's actually framed and built more on the entrepreneurial mindset. And the whole entire program is being integrated into the transition process through DOD and through Department of Education. So the intent will be through ACAP and TAP and all that stuff, that it's actually offered up as a free online course that the folks who potentially want to
Nice.
That
look
is
to be-
awesome.
Yes, that's
so,
huge.
It is huge.
Yeah,
And the course is
that is.
awesome. You guys, once it's up and running, I mean, should go check it out too.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, and
absolutely.
let
Yeah.
us know. We'll
Yeah,
put
man.
links up and
Yep.
everything like that as well.
I'll tell you
'Cause,
when.
I mean, we want to get guys out there. Sorry to
Right.
interrupt,
No,
but
go ahead.
we definitely want to get guys out there. It's not even a matter of I mean, I don't mean to sound like a prick or anything, but I don't think about money
Right.
in this. I think about the end product. The end product is a nation like breathing normally and not afraid, because the veterans stood up and we said, all right, let's start putting some legacy things to rest that don't need to be there, and let's start building better models.
Yeah,
Let's start
yeah.
going, our own way. And
Absolutely.
Sebastian brings
Sorry.
up some things that
Had too much
kind of
caffeine
of
today.
a more
Very
general
good.
nature. Not talking about any specific venture or business, but I think we're at a place in our country right now where. So I'll take a step back. The statistics of entrepreneurship after World War II, 49% of veterans, get into entrepreneurship, start their own businesses. They knew after the war that they were the future of their country. They had just saved everybody's ass, and now they're going to go and make America, rebuild the economy post-war. And that was everybody's mission. That was everybody's mission. We don't have that same feeling in society today because nobody else besides the military has skin in the game. We're the only ones. We truly, really are the only ones. Not saying nobody else cares, but we're the only ones really with skin in the game. And so that's probably part of the reason why the entrepreneurship numbers are lower, because there's not the impression that we need to rebuild the country. But the fact is that this, decade plus of the war on terror has devastated the fabric of this country in so many ways. Politically, we're more divided than ever. Mm-hmm. And, I have my views and other people have theirs, and they don't always jive. But when I was a kid, I remember we used to be able to talk, when I started becoming politically aware, we used to be able to talk about stuff without, denigrating one another and bashing each other's heads in because we're on the wrong side of the aisle from each other. You can't have a civil discourse anymore. And our country is just in a bad place. Our economy is in a bad place. Our government is more intrusive in our lives than ever before. There's so many things, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And, agree with that or not, there are a lot of ways that our society could be better. Let's just put that out there. And I think everybody on both sides of the aisle could probably agree with that. And I, honest to God, believe that our veteran community is uniquely positioned to do those better things and to create a change of mindset and to do things that unify our country and bring us back together in ways that we haven't experienced in decades. You know, and it crosses political viewpoints, it crosses party lines. You know, it's just something that it's the right thing to do because we're freaking America, by God.
Well, it's the American dream.
Yeah, it is, and that dream is disappearing. You know, entrepreneurship was always part of that. You know.
Yeah, I think this is the first year in history that the entrepreneurs rate declined. So there's more people, more businesses disappearing. Before it was always like during the churn, there was always more people willing to step up and become entrepreneurs. So the entrepreneur rate was consistent. It was always going up. Yeah. This is the first year now where, you know, the entrepreneurship rate actually went. So it's not just veterans, right? It's just in general.
Yeah. Jesus.
More and more people, right? Yeah. And I think, and honestly, you know, that's where people talk about the economy. The one thing they never address, like watch any of the presidential debates, I don't care which side, who has talked about entrepreneurship?
No one.
Yeah, very little.
Who has talked about small business creation? It's like, very little on either side. It's insane. Yeah. And to me, like, that's the one thing that's been missing this whole time. Like, no, the corporations, dude, they're all about streamlining, cutting. It's like, so they were the big job creators before. Well, that ain't happening no more. Yeah. So what has to pick up the slack? It has to be small businesses, right? New business formation, and that ain't happening either. And that's where the gap is. Yeah. So, and that's where too. It's like you said, it's like some of these veterans. I mean, they don't have a choice when it comes to employment opportunity. And by the way, who are the best folks to hire veterans?
Fellow veterans.
Right. Yeah. So, and over 50% of those 2.5 million veteran-run businesses have hired other veterans. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like one of those things where you look at something like this, it's like we need to encourage more vets to become entrepreneurs because we know that they will go out and hire other veterans, and then we'll fix our own problem. Yeah. So because the veteran unemployment rate is still very bad.
What you just said is a freaking outstanding point that I want to drive home every single time we get on this podcast is that, you know, who better to solve veterans' problems than other veterans? Yep. You know, when we were in uniform, when we were serving, you know, we were the answer to the world's problems. You know, we were America's 911 force, whatever, you know, however you want to look at it. We were the guys that people looked to solve the problem, right? And that's how we came up in the military. You know, we took responsibility for our actions. We were accountable, and we were freaking action people. We did stuff. We didn't just talk about it. We did it. And we want to continue being that as we transition into civilian life. We want to still be that guy. We don't want to dump our problems on anybody else. Nobody here is asking for a handout. What we're asking for, in my viewpoint, is for people, the government, whatever, to simply kind of in some ways just get the hell out of the way. Exactly. And just maybe enable in some small ways us to do our thing, you know, to just allow us to freaking get out there and do our thing. Yeah. And it's so hard to do that because there are so many obstacles in our paths. And, you know, there'd just be a phenomenal growth in entrepreneurship, you know, small business growth, employment, you know, bring back real quality craftsmanship, real quality customer service, you know, bring that back to America.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine? I mean, well, so here's I just want to throw this out there. I have a friend of mine. He's a civilian. He's never served, but he's a great guy, and he supports veterans and stuff like that. He provided me with a lot of work over the past year, and kind of helped feed my family. But he lives in Asheville, North Carolina, and he's got some money. You know, he's not like super wealthy or anything, but he can afford a nice place and nice cars and that sort of thing. He just moved into a new place and it needed to be like renovated. And of course, you know, his wife's used to certain things, so they wanted to do all upscale, you know, custom doors, custom cabinetry, high-end appliances, all this kind of stuff. All these different providers that did these different things, you know, these are top-of-the-line providers, top-of-the-line companies, top-of-the-line products that they're selling. Every single one of them has failed him over the past 6 months, so that now he's moved into the house and he's got some cheap-ass cabinets in the kitchen to get by with while they have taken the ones he ordered out several times, tried to fix them, bring them back. They're still jacked up. And it's like, these are some of the highest end products and services being offered in that industry, in that market, and in an area where there's high demand for luxury items, and people can't deliver. What the hell's going on in America when somebody who's got the money to pay for this stuff can't get what the hell they ask for?
Right. High-end oak cabinetry in western North Carolina, and this guy can't get service. What the hell is going on?
There's bars on the finish. The appliance comes and it's broken. It's like, why are you installing a broken appliance?
Yeah.
A custom door that was handcrafted comes and the measurements were off. The custom wood floors that were redone. They got cracks in them.
Yeah.
They got to take it up and put it back down again. It's like, really?
You're hitting on a lot of different things too, believe it or not. Your construction company that you mentioned before,
sure, yeah.
Right? And these different guys. All right, so a construction company that's out there, but a lot of people don't necessarily know, and we like framing up as well, 1099 contractors,
Right.
subcontractors as a whole that fulfill that void. You can't necessarily order a subcontractor what to do, but as long as they're making the negotiables on their job description or whatever's going into it, a subcontractor can fill it. And we'll come back right after the break because I know that Old Man River over here has got to unleash his bladder. So we're just going to do a quick radio check with our sponsors out there and get back to you. Cigars and Sea Stories is proud to support and sling Counter-Strike Coffee. Counter-Strike Coffee, I want you to know, is meant to be drink black. Now, I myself love coffee. I'm a big coffee drinker. I went away from black coffee for a little while. Needed the cream and sugar when I was rocking it with the generic blend. Counter-Strike Coffee brought me back into the fold in a huge, huge way. They do a great dark roast. I'm a big fan of napalm. That's my fave. Smooth operator is good, though. It can go with cakes and pies, and I got a bit of a sweet tooth. I know a couple of us do, And then also Firewatch. Firewatch, that's going to be the kick in the ass that you need in order to get your day going the right way. You know what I'm saying? If you haven't already done so, check out counterstrikecoffee.com. Use promo code CIGARSANDSEA. You will get 10% off. Again, that's counterstrikecoffee.com. Use promo and we're code back. CIGARSANDSEA. Mike, Jocelyn, Tim, sitting down with Dean Bundschu of Bunker Labs and John Brady of Nusiak Wines. And John's going to be helping us out. He's going to be doing some project management. But before the break, I started going into a lot of people don't necessarily understand that an entrepreneur does not always need to be the founder of the company.
Right.
And an entrepreneur does not necessarily need to be the chief suite, the original founders of the company. You can work as an entrepreneur, as a 1099 contractor,
right,
as a freelancer, as a subcontractor, within the construction realm. If you have a skill or a talent, which is marketable,
right,
and frankly scalable when you get together with a team, right? One coder gets together with 10 coders and builds Facebook or whatever. That's naturally how it works. Plus also veterans are fantastic entrepreneurs if we believe and look at that discipline. So, hey, I want to do a spin-off. Hey, Vons, I'd love to do a spin-off. No problem, Safeway. We'll talk to you later. And then, whoosh, there you go.
Sometimes it's more difficult, Pat. But,
right,
you're right. Like, my partner, Hal Fisher, his company, Military Stars, he was an entrepreneur within Orion. So, Orion focused on placement, direct placement, primarily officers and skilled enlisted, technology, tech. Electronic technicians, mechanical, whatever have you. But his idea was, okay, you guys are focused on that, but there's a whole nother subset of veterans over here, right? This was back in, 2002? Mm-hmm. So he was like, let me start a company called Military Stars, and he turned it into the largest military job fair company in the country, right? Mm. So Orion did direct placement, but he put together a company that ran over 30-some events across the country and would have anywhere between 300 and 500 veterans. Between 50 to 60 companies come into those events and focus on the skills that weren't a fit for Orion, right? And naturally, what the company did was grow, and then Orion bought it. So he built the company up within Orion. And how he did that, too, he was like, you know what, just seed me. Provide me with the seed funding. give me enough money to go do the first 4 or 5 events, build a base, and after that, I feed myself.
Give me enough rope to hang myself with.
First thing I thought of.
But they did, right?
That's awesome.
So and that's exactly what they did. And then once the company got all built up, then the company's like, damn, there's tons of value here, and they bought the company. So that's how he did it.
Gotta love it.
So
see, and I'm a strong believer that a lot of people are being misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
As worker bees, when it's like, no, man, like you could go out and you could do the 1099 thing, and then out of a profit share, depending on your op agreement or whatever you're doing, roll that into equity base when you structure to incorporate. People don't know. They're like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't matter. Go learn. Go learn from Bunker Labs. Go learn from EBV. Go learn, which are great fillers. The other boots to business, the workshops that are out there that feed into, yes, this is a residential program that I would like to be a part of.
Right. And you know what? But not everyone's a fit, but that doesn't mean they can't be too. So a lot of the folks, again, they could take the Bunker in the Box to get more insight and just learn more about what it takes to become an entrepreneur, right? They can, like you said, go to Boots to Business programs, take those. Those are natural fillers to different entrepreneurs that are offered at different community colleges, programs like that. So there's all different types of programs that tie into what we do. So, and oftentimes that's exactly what we do. Maybe you are just idea stage, right?
Right.
So, if you're at the idea stage, well, yeah, go ahead and put together ideas. For example, the toothbrush company that I told you about.
That's
great. How it was.
Two-finger toothbrush.
Yeah, two-finger, yeah. So, that's where he was about 2.5 years ago. He just had a concept.
Right.
So, but he busted his ass, connected with resources, raised a little friends and family money, got a prototype built, lined up a manufacturer, just pure hustle. Right?
Hell yes.
Yeah.
So, and now I think he sold over 100 and some thousand of them. So,
nice.
Yes.
Opened up a distro.
See, and that's the thing is you take a guy who's a quote unquote founder,
right.
has the concept. Maybe that guy can't execute. Maybe that guy doesn't know sales, marketing,
right.
tech, RD, none of that stuff. So it's like, well, who's he going to call on? Hey, Jocelyn, I'm doing a podcast, man. You want to come help me out? Right? You know what I'm saying? He's going to call on his brothers. That's just how it's going to happen. Right. But if his brothers are kind of waiting in the wings, so to speak, and they understand how to snatch those opportunities as well, from the 1099 side of things, and being in and around.
Well, just like when I go back and look at both my founding partners, as I mentioned, were veterans. But I tell you, we started a tech company. We had a phenomenal concept, but, we didn't have a prototype yet. And we pitched it and actually had a bunch of interest from people who had money because it resonated, the concept did. Except for they were like, what do you guys, have you built it yet? And we're like, well, no. What we did, though, was the next step was, okay, we got to get a prototype. So how we do that, we did it like a lot of companies do that don't have any tech guys. We used a firm to do it, right? But they built our prototype, but guess what? Once we got a prototype on the market, over 20,000 some people signed up like within a month, right? So we were like, holy crap. Now we took it back. And that's where some people who were like, wow, okay, the concept works. Within a month, they got 27,000 people. Then we got a first check, right?
Nice. Then
we realized, well, you know what? If we're going to be a tech company, we need to bring that tech in-house. So we realized that we had to put together a team. So the next logical process, we reached back out in the community and we found our CTO, who, by the way, was an Army veteran. So the fourth member of our team was an Army veteran as well. Our chief technology officer, who was a genius. And, of course, tech guys running packs. So he was able to connect to several other different tech folks, and we rolled and brought that tech in-house. So,
our tech guy's laughing.
I picture little packs of weasels running around.
Right. But, so that's what it is. It's all about, connecting into that network and being to connect with other people.
You can't play Dungeons and Dragons alone.
Right.
So that's what I'm sorry.
That's the great part. So we got another road kind of highlighted with 1099 guys, and then we've got stories about how
entrepreneurs.
Some guys' projects are not getting done right by the people that are supposed to be doing them right. Well, to some veteran out there, their guts just going, man, I could do that so much better. I know that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that fire, that is the mindset that we all need to get into. That willingness to start undertaking these different things, because all of those different things that you and I'm speaking to myself here as well, guys, like all the things that you're like, fuck, I wish that was different. That's exactly, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
We're not blowing smoke up your ass. We've got bunker labs. We've got an entire slew of veterans across the nation just waiting because everyone I talk to has that same fire in their belly. It's not like a secluded thing to a certain sect of veterans that are just, out to be louder than everybody else. It's actually real. Like, there's a real thing happening in veterans, like, seeing that there's shit going down and we need to fix it. So all of those different things. It's a call to action.
Yep.
When you see shit fucked up, we got to fix it.
Yep.
It's a can-do attitude. It's kind of like we're just built that way, I guess, or maybe it was beat into us, but we just know we can do it. Sometimes we don't know what the hell that it is until we're out. It's like me and my partner. We were at a winery and we looked at each other and go, "I think we could do this," and that's how we started.
The musings of John Brady.
And he's an Army guy. He's a Vietnam veteran from Bud Radovich is my partner. He's a crusty Army guy too, and we just, I don't know, Johnny, what the hell, let's do it, and that's how we started because it was like we could do this,
right?
And then we just stumbled into it from after that. I was like, okay, let's make wine,
Hell yes.
Have juice, add yeast, let's go.
But the one thing that I do want to emphasize is, a lot of the guys who are transitioning, like, they're like, well, I can't do this because I got an idea. I just need someone to give me money. It's like, dude, no one's going to give you money, man. Yeah.
Right.
So that's one of the things that you got to knock into. Like, maybe at some point people will, if you have something that's worth investing in. But the reality of a situation, if you have to have the right mindset. You have to understand that's definitely going to require sacrifice. You can't have a security mindset. You have to be all about risk. Not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You cannot be
door kickers,
and you need,
infantrymen.
And you need
let's
to have
do
a
this.
plan.
Yeah.
So if you're getting out, it's like, maybe if you want to be an entrepreneur, you're coming back from a deployment, instead of taking that money and buying a fucking car.
Yep.
Set it aside to be your be
your seed money.
Right?
Yeah.
And honestly, when I got back from Iraq, that's exactly what I did. I didn't spend any money for a year, right? However, I cashed out my 401k, took a second mortgage on a house. I used half my money to pay off my still outstanding student loans from back in the day, and the rest of it into the business, right? Yep. So I just went all in.
So you didn't have an ex-wife?
What?
You didn't have an ex-wife?
No. As a matter of fact, I came home on my 2 weeks leave and got married. So,
so she was,
and then went back.
She came along with the rest of it.
That's great.
Well, you just said two things that are really important. You said idea, and you said plan.
Yep.
And I wanna just kind of emphasize this for all our fellow veterans that are sitting out there, and tag along with what Jocelyn's saying. If you can't. Ideas are like assholes. Everybody's got one.
That's right.
They're a dime a dozen. Freaking everybody on the planet has a freaking great idea. It doesn't matter. If it. You can't go to an investor with an unfulfilled idea and say, "Hey, give me money." You have to have put some work into it and developed something from that idea to make it palatable for anybody to want to get on board with you. So you have to suffer and do the freaking work. Right. And what is a plan? Well, okay. First, what's a dream? A dream is just, it's out there. That's the idea.
It's pixie dust,
yeah, it's pixie dust. It's it's great. It feels good. It's all warm and fuzzy in your heart and your mind and all that. But it's freaking unicorns and rainbows, right? What's a plan or a goal? It's an executable way of getting to that dream, right? And it's got a due date on it.
Yep.
That's a plan or a goal. It's got a freaking due date, and you as an individual have to exercise the discipline to get to that. And if it means suffering and eating freaking peas and mac and cheese for every day for however long, or not getting that new car when your tires are falling off and your head gasket blows and you're just going to have to do some home maintenance in the driveway, hey, so be it, right?
Duct tape.
And if you got a spouse and she's not on board, well, reevaluate either reevaluate your plan or reevaluate your spouse, one or the other. But you've got two choices there. So, and I'm not advocating
That's
that.
the God's honest truth.
It's true.
Because if you're going to open a business,
Yep.
you're passionate about it.
Yeah,
You've got to
You'll love it as much as you.
that's
Yeah.
big enough.
and
You have to have a
but you've got
spouse
to
on
get your
board, yeah.
you've got to get your family on board. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, because it will tear your marriage or relationship
Yeah, it
apart if you don't get them on board ahead of time.
Hez, I love
and
you.
I was very fortunate, but
Yeah,
it
me
wasn't
too.
without stress.
She
and
liked
friction,
wine.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because literally we cashed out our entire savings, put our
Yes.
put our house.
Tell that story.
Yeah, that's
Tell that
that's
story.
scary,
And
dude.
of
Let's motivate
course,
some
as an
people.
entrepreneur, it was almost 1 full year where I worked without a salary. Well, we were hiring and paying everyone else.
You'll love
Yeah.
this.
Well,
finally,
Justin over here is rocking
raised-
the freaking no paycheck.
Well, you
Like,
mean
it's
you get
cool.
paid?
Right.
I haven't paid myself
we
yet.
finally had it up and going and raised
gotta do what
our
you gotta
money,
do.
and then we're able to incrementally
Yeah.
reevaluate the company and see how much money we were bringing in and begin to actually take a salary. But it wasn't, I'm the CEO, my salary goes to $1 million, right? You know, so no.
Oh,
it
I'm
was
getting paid last.
And people always say, well, I want to be a CEO. I'm like, dude, I'm paying developers 100 and some thousand, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I want to be you. I'm like, really? So you want to work for a year without a paycheck? And now you want to get paid 40,000? Because I'll take your 100. We'll switch.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? You
In
know,
a heartbeat.
Yeah,
Right.
That's right.
Jesus.
You
Oh,
know,
man.
So,
Yeah.
It's not as glamorous as you think.
And
So I'll
maybe
flip,
one day it
this
will.
whole I'll flip this whole discussion
But
on
it's
its
worth
head,
it.
and
It's
and
super
let's
worth
talk
it.
about getting into a nonprofit venture.
Oh, Jesus.
With your without any confirmed funding source. I mean, I don't have other than my retirement check. I got no income, and me and Bennett, we're trying to get this Warrior Hall thing off the ground, and it's like,
The dancing on the side hasn't taken off.
That
dude,
didn't do.
freaking yeah, the banana thong isn't as popular as I thought it
Chippendales
would
has
be.
got to be better with their
gotta be
callbacks.
Yeah, but
Because
no,
you
I mean,
tried out like 6 or 7 times already, haven't you? No?
no.
But you and the Jacksonville Ninja weren't trying out at Chippendales together?
Well,
I could have.
I might have been, but I'm not going to
I
comment.
could have
on
sworn that was you. I was in the back
Tell
seat,
me,
in the
tell me
back
about
row.
Warrior Hall.
Well, actually, I didn't plan on talking about that today, but okay, we'll do that just real briefly because we're going to talk more about that in other episodes when Bennett's here and all that. But so Bennett Tanton, who's the 4th member of Cigars and Sea Stories, who can't be with us today, unfortunately. Me and Michael Penny and Bennett all met at the Entrepreneurship Boot Camp for Veterans up at Syracuse University last year.
Last July.
July of last year. And so fantastic experience. And one of the greatest things that came out of it for me was, like we talked about earlier, that network, and just seeing a cohort of your fellow veterans, 29 of us, and I'm pretty sure that at least 35 of us were all in, let's support our fellow veterans.
Right.
Even though there are 29 of us, you get that little play on numbers.
Right.
Anyway, so, but it was a fantastic experience. And, I went in there with a preconceived notion of, I had this little podunk company, called Parkhurst Aero, where I was going to, get into, airplane salvage and stuff like that. And it could have been something, whatever. It wasn't really my passion, but it was cool and I liked it. But being around this group of veterans really opened my eyes to how much we need each other. And I'm going to say this at the risk of getting some backlash, and I welcome it. If you're an active duty guy, because I was a year and a half ago, I was on active duty, and I was still in uniform a year and a half ago. But if you're on active duty and you've never separated from the military, you don't know what it's like to do the transition. So be very
Right.
careful.
Very
Be
true.
very careful
Yep.
about what kind of advice you give a young kid or even an older kid getting out of the military about what they should or shouldn't do or what they should or shouldn't expect. I'm not saying that good advice isn't just good advice. Leadership is always leadership. Got it. But just be careful about what you tell them. Anyway, so I very quickly, during the 9 days that we were in residence at Syracuse, I decided that, Parkhurst Aero is cool and I can make some money at this, but what I'm passionate about is giving back to my fellow veterans. And I didn't know what form that would take. I didn't know where I was going with it, but I just knew that I needed to do something like that. Well, about halfway through the week, Bennett and I are sitting down late at night, like 2 a.m. or something, and he's like, hey, so I got this thing called Warrior Hall. Check it out. And he showed me this logo, and I was like, dude, that's badass. And a name like Warrior Hall, I mean, man, we could do anything with that. What do you want to do with it, And so we talked and he's like, so you're my co-founder. I'm like, I am? I'm like, cool.
Congratulations, you made it.
Yeah. So, it literally happened like that. I mean, it's all Bennett's idea, but he wanted to take basically, so he's a trained peer support specialist in the state of North Carolina. He has since become employed with the Veterans Administration up in Wilmington, Delaware, as a peer support specialist, which is something that's relatively new in the VA world. Just in the last, I think it's 5 or 6 years, they've started hiring peer support specialists, which is not a licensed clinician. You have your shrinks that wear the white lab coats and who are typically not veterans, who veterans typically avoid the VA because they don't want to go talk to these people because they don't understand them. And that's been the stigma for years and years and years and years. A peer support specialist, by definition, is a guy who's walked in my shoes. All you guys sitting around in the studio today are all my peers because you've all served. You've all deployed. We've walked kind of in the same dirt, in the same boots, right? So we're peers, all right? In the mental health world, there's a definition for a peer support specialist, which is basically you have to be from kind of the same background, but in the mental health world, it also means that you have a shared experience of having gone through either a mental health or substance abuse type of an issue and are in recovery from that for a specified period of time, typically a year. And of course, in the military or veteran space, you're talking about PTSD and depression, things like that, or all the multitude of other issues that we have. What Bennett and I want to do is not only deal with those specific mental health issues, but we want to create a peer curriculum that's built from the ground up to address the veteran community, because we don't just deal with just PTSD or just depression or just bipolar or just, this or that or the other diagnosis. We deal with a variety of these different diagnoses, while at the same time we're dealing with physical injuries, we're dealing with grief over the loss of friends in combat, we're dealing with grief over the loss of a career that we enjoyed and were totally sold out for, that we no longer get to do. We're dealing with the dislocation of having to transition into a society in civilian life that we feel like, whether they do or don't, we feel like they don't get us, and in fact they don't.
Right.
And there's all these issues going on, and you're having broken marriages. You've got kids that didn't know you because you were deployed back to back to back, and they resent you, and so all these things that are all piled on top of each other at the same time that are unique to the veteran community. And so it's not just mental health in the clinical sense. And a peer is a guy who's got specific training to help you navigate all of these things and help you tie into resources for all of these things. Entrepreneurship, education, job searches, all of that is part of peer support, and the mental health stuff and the marital counseling, all of it. And so anyway, that's what, Warrior Hall is our aim is to create a volunteer network of veterans around the country that are trained peer support specialists that will deal with combat veterans and their families and help navigate the path. So that's what it's all about. And we're not really launching yet, so there's more to come.
What I love so much about it is the aspect of being a veteran on entrepreneurship and having a place to go for health and wellness and peer support.
Yeah.
Because if I walked into the VA right now, they'd be like, self-employed? Grab a smock, start packing groceries. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like you pull the trigger in the Marine Corps. You don't know shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, man, I was a patrol leader. I'm ready to go out. Let's do sales and marketing and shit like that. And they're like, what? And so to be able to, because it's already hard enough, right? If you're a civilian who has never seen war, it's already hard enough to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. So now you're a veteran who's dealing with all of these other things. Now, granted, we have the network, and that's a huge leverage. But Jesus, man, you have no one to talk to when you're an entrepreneur. You're a business owner already, so you're just kind of isolated. Well, now you're a veteran who saw combat and a few other different things that are right. And there's how much more isolated could you possibly feel? Oh, but you're supposed to be doing entrepreneurship, and what is entrepreneurship? It's a community-based thing. It's communication. It's relationship-based.
Yeah.
So how do you go from being isolated and also not being able to, interact with peers on an entrepreneurship level?
Yeah.
let alone veteran level.
So
look
peer-
at it like even powerful. Like you guys went to a 9-day course,
Yeah.
and look how many connections you made.
Oh yeah.
Look at where that's
Incredible
gone from
change.
there.
Yeah. Just changed
Yeah.
my life, literally.
Yep.
Yeah.
And look
Absolutely.
at the ideas and the passion you see when you bring. So, and that's really, I mean, that's what the whole bunker program's about, right? It's just
Yeah.
doing that on a bigger scale now.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. And that's why I'm working with these guys with Cigars and Sea Stories. I'm unemployed. I'm making a retirement check,
Right.
and I actually thought about, just for a brief moment, drawing unemployment because I'm not employed, but I made the determination in my own mind that it's more work to go after my unemployment check than it's worth.
Right.
I mean, I thought about getting a part-time job, but I'm just gonna make do with what I'm making on my retirement check, and try to build this thing. So all of you go out there, subscribe, rate, and share
There you go.
Cigars and Sea Stories, because Tim needs a paycheck, and so does Justin and Mike. And
but
Just a little bit.
It's like if, for other folks who maybe aren't trying retirement, I mean, it's fine to get a part-time job. I'll
Yeah,
tell you what
absolutely.
I did too.
Yeah.
Every time, like after we sold PrepChamps, I just took my skills and went out and freelance consultant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I picked up enough freelance consulting. I was like, oh, maybe we should start a consulting company, right? While I'm in between adventures. And so then we built LSP Consulting, but I was never super passionate about it. It was just something to collect a paycheck.
Yeah.
So, and that's where me and Hal and Jay kept on doing that, but we were like, God, we need to find a way to get back to helping veterans,
Yeah.
which is how Started Veterans was born.
Yeah.
I'm
actually still looking for a part-time job. I'm just
Yeah.
kind of holding out for the right one. I don't want to get tied down to something that's going to take too much of my time. And
Well,
all
that was
kind of
nice
stuff,
about
so.
being a consultant is if you have some type of skill that you can turn into something that someone will pay for, right?
Yeah.
Then you can
Right.
still control your schedule and do it part-time.
Well, I used
don't
to be a scout
really-
sniper. Somebody
People
want to
don't
pay
really
for those
hire
skills?
field
Yeah.
artillery guys. It's like, well, we don't need anybody blown up.
Well, sometimes
Sometimes
it's
I think they
sweat
do.
King of the battlefield.
Oh, I'll tell
Most
you.
people don't realize
Yeah.
leadership.
Oh, I went to a job interview. I'll tell you briefly. Right after I came off active duty, and went to several job interviews, and they were terrible. But well, hell, I've been active duty for 14 years, and so I roll up into this job interview, and we're talking, and we got to we're talking about all the going over my history and all the jobs that I did within those within my active duty, all the leadership stuff and the PR stuff that I had to do with it being a liaison between DOD and the state. And at the end of it was the end of the interview, because she said, "Wow, you really haven't worked in the last 14 years."
What?
And I said,
Oh my God!
"I'm sorry. I think this interview's over."
Right.
I thanked her for the interview and got up and walked out. I was like,
haven't worked.
hell with it. I'm just going to start my
See,
own
that-
business.
That's a
Right.
stigma. That's what we got to turn around. In fact, we're going to
Yeah.
turn it around by presenting a better paradigm.
Voila.
Came here a Marine, going home a veteran. Kill. Gotta love that. Hell yes. If you haven't already done so, subscribe, rate, review the podcast. Join us on another episode of Cigars and Sea Stories. We love you. Give us comments, review the episode, 5-star rating, get us on New and Noteworthy, iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM. You people rock. Jocelyn, cue the music, brother.